You did not come here out of curiosity, and you did not come here by accident. If it were only a quick scroll, your heart would not have paused from the very first second. Something pulled you to stop, as if someone gently touched your shoulder in the middle of a crowd and called your name exactly right. Heaven has been waiting for this moment, not to test you more, but to speak the words you have needed to hear for a very long time. You have gone too far in silence. No one can fully see the road you have walked, the dark stretches you have crossed, the long nights you lay there, eyes wide open, your mind refusing to rest. During the day, you still step outside, still fulfill your role, still nod, still smile, but inside, there are small cracks quietly spreading. You do not tell anyone because you are used to carrying. You are used to being the support. You are used to having to be strong. And because of that, you learned how to endure so well that you forgot you also need to be held. You tell yourself that if you just try a little longer, just push through a little more, everything will be fine. But those little more moments connect into months, into years, not because you are weak, but because you are loyal. Loyal to responsibility, to others, to promises. There is only one thing you have not been loyal to for long enough, and that is your own soul. Heaven has seen that, not since yesterday, and not only recently. Heaven has been watching you for a very long time, even in moments when you no longer knew how to pray. Prayers that broke off halfway, sighs replacing words. There were nights when you just lay there, saying nothing, but screaming inside, and you wondered if anyone could hear, if anyone truly noticed. The answer is yes, always yes. There is a truth you need to know from the beginning. Before this story goes any further, not a single moment of your journey has been missed. Not a single tear has fallen without being seen. Not once have you forced yourself up in exhaustion without heaven noticing. Psalm 139 says this, not as ancient words, but as a whisper meant just for you. There is nowhere you can go where His presence is not there, even when you think you are alone. You may be used to others leaning on you. They trust you. They look for you. They need you. And you do not refuse because you have a caring heart. But very few people ask you who is holding you right now. Very few realize that you yourself are trembling. You learn to stand straight even when your knees want to give way. You learn to stay silent when tired because you fear that if you stop, everything will collapse. What you have not realized is this. There are things that were never given to you to hold. There are burdens you carry not because you were chosen to carry them, but because you do not know how to put them down. You believe that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But the truth is, there are things that only stand when you stop trying to hold them by your own strength. This story does not begin with victory, and it does not begin with blinding light. It begins exactly where you are standing. In the tiredness you have learned to hide. It begins in the sigh you do not know the reason for. In the emptiness you feel, even though you have done everything people expected of you. And right there, heaven does not blame you. Heaven does not ask why you have not done enough. Heaven simply comes closer. There is something very important you need to distinguish, and perhaps no one has said it clearly to you before. You are not weak. You are just tired. Tired from trying for too long without real rest. Tired from carrying things that should have been shared. Tired from believing your worth is measured by how much pressure you can endure. But heaven does not measure you by endurance. Heaven sees you through love. You may have thought that heaven only comes when you are strong enough, good enough, worthy enough. But your story moves in a different direction. Heaven comes when you begin to crack, not to shame you, but to keep you from breaking apart. There are divine interventions that do not arrive with thunder, but with a pause, with a very quiet moment, when you realize you cannot continue the same way anymore. And this is that moment. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Real enough that you feel it touch the exact place that hurts. The place you have never named. You do not need to prove anything here. You do not need to be strong anymore. Just stay. Just listen. Because this story is not here to teach you to do more, but to remind you of who you are. You are someone who is seen, someone who is known, someone who is not forgotten in the crowd of those who keep trying. And this journey, even though it has been long and exhausting, has never been meaningless. Heaven has never taken its eyes off you. And from here, everything will begin to move in a different way. Not faster, but deeper. Not by your strength, but by the presence of the one who has always been there, even when you no longer had the strength to call his name. You have grown so used to living in a state of depletion that you consider it normal. Waking up each day with an invisible weight pressing on your chest, yet still getting up, still stepping outside, still fulfilling your role, not because you are not tired, but because you do not allow yourself to stop. There are mornings when you are already exhausted the moment you open your eyes, as if sleep can no longer reach the deepest place within you. But you keep going, because that is what you have always done. On the outside, people see someone steady, someone reliable, someone who, if anything happens, everyone thinks of first. You are the one who keeps the rhythm, the anchor, the one who stands in the middle when everything sways. And you do it so well that no one imagines you could also fall. No one asks if you are okay. No one sees how you shrink inward when the door closes behind you. No one hears the sighs you force back inside. You have carried silent battles for far too long. Battles without cheers, without witnesses, without medals. Only nights when you wonder if you still have enough strength to face tomorrow. There are moments when you have prayed without knowing where to begin. Words falling apart, thoughts tangled, emotions heavy. You want to say so much, but your mouth cannot release a single sound. And then you fall silent, not because you do not believe, but because it hurts too much to speak. You have learned to smile in rooms where your heart is breaking. You have become so used to saying "I am fine" that it has turned into a reflex. But deep inside, you know you are not fine. Not in a way that is easy for others to see. Not a sudden collapse, but a slow erosion, little by little, like a flame burning without enough oxygen. You are still glowing, but growing weaker, still standing, but trembling. There are times when you ask yourself whether God sees you, not just the things you do, but you yourself. Sees the moments of doubt, sees the moments when you are too tired to explain anymore, sees the times you ask in silence, "Have I tried hard enough?" And that question does not come from pride, but from exhaustion. You do not want praise. You just want to breathe. Heaven has heard that question, not only today, and the answer does not come as a demand for you to do more. It comes as a gentle acknowledgement that you have gone farther than a human should go alone. There is a line between faithfulness and self-erosion, and you have stood too long on the other side of that line, not because you do not know how to stop, but because you fear that if you stop, everything will fall apart. But there is something you need to face right now. If everything falls apart simply because you rest for a moment, then perhaps you have been carrying what does not belong to you. Perhaps you have unknowingly placed yourself in a position that only God can hold. You were not created to be the source of strength for everyone. You were created to be connected to the source. And when you cut yourself off from that source by trying to do everything on your own, your soul will dry up, even while your outer life keeps moving. In that exhaustion, an ancient word rises not as doctrine, but as a hand gently resting on your shoulder. Psalm 34 says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those whose spirits are crushed. Not close to the perfect, not close to those who have never been tired, but close to those who have reached their limit. That means that right now, when you feel weakest, heaven is closest to you. You may have thought this exhaustion was a sign that you are on the wrong path, but it may also be a sign that you have been on the right path for too long without rest. There are journeys that do not end in failure, but in a pause arranged by heaven, not to remove you, but to keep you, not to make you quit, but to keep you from being so depleted that you cannot stand again. You do not need to feel ashamed for being tired. You do not need to apologize for needing rest. Your soul is not a machine. It needs to breathe. It needs to be still. It needs to be set down. And heaven does not look at you with disappointment when you admit this. Heaven looks at you with the understanding of the one who has seen how long you have been trying without anyone knowing. Perhaps you are not ready to believe that you are allowed to stop. Perhaps you are still worried about what will happen if you let go. But at least in this moment, you can allow yourself to hear a truth different from the one you have told yourself for so long. That truth is this: you are not weak. You are just tired. And tiredness is not the enemy. It is a signal, an invitation, a turning point that heaven is placing before you. And as you stand before that turning point, your story begins to change direction, not with a dramatic turn, but with a softening within, with the admission that you do not have to continue the same way anymore, that there is another way to walk, another rhythm to live by. Heaven is not in a hurry. Heaven does not push. Heaven is simply there, waiting for you to realize that you were never meant to go on alone. There is a very strange moment that happens when you reach your limit. Not a complete collapse, but an unexpected stillness, where you realize that you cannot continue the old way anymore. You are still standing there, still breathing, still existing, but inside something has loosened, not because you gave up, but because you no longer have the strength to grip everything the way you used to. And in that very moment, a word that does not come from your effort, but comes from heaven, becomes very clear: you have done enough. That word carries no pressure. It does not ask you to prove anything. It does not come with a list of things you still need to do. It arrives like permission, like release. As if someone looks straight at you and says, "I have seen enough. I know enough." You do not need to strain yourself anymore to be acknowledged. You may have been waiting for instructions, a plan, a next step, but what you receive instead is an invitation to stop. You have grown used to thinking that if you stop trying, everything will slip from your hands. You believe that if you loosen your grip even a little, the world you are holding will collapse. But the truth is, there are things that never stood because of your strength. They stand because another hand has been holding them from underneath. And that hand has never left. You were simply too busy holding everything by yourself to remember that. The world says your value is found in how much you can endure, how much you can do, how much you can carry. But the kingdom of heaven says something else. It says that true strength is not found in trying harder, but in knowing when to return. There are moments when stopping is not a step backward. It is returning to your rightful place. Returning to where you are not the source, but the one connected to the source. You may feel conflicted hearing that. One part of you wants to believe, wants to let go, wants to rest, but another part is afraid. Afraid of losing control, afraid of being judged, afraid that if you are no longer the one who always stands strong, always carries, then who are you left to be? But listen carefully, you are not loved because of how much you do. You are loved because you are a child, and nothing you do more or less can change that. Here, right in this flow, no one is forcing you to respond in any particular way. But if inside you there is a very quiet nod, if you feel yourself being called without needing to explain, you may leave a small sign. Not for someone else to see, but for yourself to remember this moment. A simple response. an acknowledgement that you have heard, have felt, have been here. And if you wish to stay with stories like this, where you do not have to strain yourself, you may choose to connect more deeply, not out of habit, but because your soul needs to be nourished. You do not need to understand everything right now. You do not need to know what the next step will look like. The only thing placed before you in this moment is this truth: you are not alone in your exhaustion, and you are not judged for reaching your limit. Heaven does not look at you and say, "You have not done enough." Heaven looks at you and says, "It is time to change how the burden is carried." There are burdens that do not disappear the moment you let go, but they change hands. From your shoulders, they are placed into another hand, a hand that does not tremble, a hand that does not grow weary, a hand that has held the history of humanity and is still gentle enough to hold a tired soul. When you allow that to happen, even for a moment, your breathing begins to change, not because the problem is solved, but because you are no longer alone in it. You may be used to telling yourself that you must be strong just a little longer, but what you are learning now is a different kind of strength. Strong enough to admit that you cannot do everything alone. Strong enough to stop in a world that celebrates busyness. Strong enough to trust that there is care not dependent on your performance. This is not weakness in disguise. This is wisdom that only those who have walked far enough come to understand. When the words "you have done enough" settle within you, they begin to loosen the knots you have tightened for far too long. Not all at once, not loudly, but truly. You begin to realize that you no longer need to prove anything. You do not need to run to be seen. You have already been seen, and not just from now, but for a very long time. This is not a moment of ending, but it is a moment of transition. From striving to trusting, from tightening to releasing, from asking "how much longer can I endure" to a gentler question, "will I allow myself to be held?" And that question, though simple, opens an entirely different path for your journey. You do not need to step forward yet. Just stand still here for a moment. Let these words settle. Let your body realize it no longer has to tense. Let your soul remember what it feels like to be held. Because from this moment on, your story no longer revolves around how hard you try, but around who you trust. When you begin to allow yourself to stop, a very familiar fear rises up. Not the fear of darkness, but the fear of losing control. You have grown used to living in a state of always holding on, always bracing, always predicting what will happen next. Silence makes you restless. Rest makes you feel guilty. You are not used to doing nothing, because for so long, you have believed that if you do not act, do not hold, do not support, everything will slip from your hands. You have learned to treat pressure as normal. You call it responsibility. You call it duty. You call it faith. But deep inside, there is a part of you that is exhausted from playing the role of the one in control. You do not say it out loud, because you fear that if you admit it, people will be disappointed. But the truth is, you are tired of always being the one who stands firm while everything around you shakes. Here, your story touches a hard but necessary truth. Not everything needs you to hold it. There are things you have clung to because you thought if you let go, they would break. But you forgot that there is a deeper, stronger foundation that does not depend on your strength. When you try to control everything, it is not because you are bad, but because you are afraid. Afraid of chaos, afraid of loss, afraid of being abandoned, and that fear has kept you living in constant tension. Heaven does not blame you for that. Heaven understands why you hold so tightly, but heaven also knows you were not created to live this way forever. There is a very short, very direct word that sounds like an anchor in the middle of great waves. Psalm 46 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Not try harder, not endure more, but be still. And in that stillness, Remember who is truly in control. Stillness is not neglect. It is a courageous act in a world that constantly demands you react, rush, and prove yourself. When you are still, you stop responding from old instincts. You create space for another truth to speak, the truth that you are not the center of everything. And that does not make you smaller, it frees you. You may have thought that if you do not hold on, calculate, or worry ahead, everything will fall into chaos. But look back. Many of the things you worried about never happened. Many of the scenarios you built in your mind never became real. And the things that truly mattered, the things that should have collapsed if they depended only on your strength, are still standing. Not because you are that strong, but because there has been a quiet protection you could not see. Your story begins to turn in a different direction when you realize that rest is not escape. It is return, a return to your true place. You are not the savior. You are not the source of every solution. You are the one who is loved, guided, and supported. When you place yourself in that position, the burden naturally changes shape. It does not disappear right away, but it no longer crushes you as it did before. You may feel resistance inside when you hear this. A familiar voice saying, "If I am still, if I stop, if I do not control, then who will do it?" But that very question shows that you have been standing where you were never meant to stand. There are battles that are not won by charging in, but by stepping back. Not stepping back out of fear, but stepping back to make room for another power to act. In the kingdom of heaven, rest is not laziness. It is a form of warfare. When you rest, you tell fear that it no longer gets to decide. When you are still, you tell pressure that it no longer controls your rhythm of life. When you let go, you declare that you trust there is a stronger hand holding this story. This does not mean you have no responsibility. It does not mean you abandon everything. It means you clearly distinguish what is yours to carry and what is not. Your part is to walk in obedience each day. Your part is to do what is right in front of you with a peaceful heart. The rest, the things beyond your reach, were never yours to hold in the first place. You may be used to living in a state of alert, always preparing for the worst, but you were not created to live like a soldier who never leaves the trench. Even the strongest warrior needs shelter. And Psalm 46 does not only say, "Be still," it also says, "The Lord is a refuge and strength." Not strength you must create, but strength you are invited to step into. When you allow yourself to believe this, even just a little, your heartbeat begins to slow. Your breathing becomes deeper, not because every problem disappears, but because you are no longer carrying them alone. A transfer is taking place, very quietly. No applause, no witnesses, but your soul knows. It knows it has just set down something it has carried for too long. You do not need to force yourself to believe right away. True faith does not come from self-persuasion, but from experiencing being held. And when you allow yourself to be still, you begin to experience that, not as a loud miracle, but as solid ground beneath your feet. You no longer have to stand on your toes. You can place your whole foot down and know that you will not fall. This story has not reached its ending, but here something has changed. You are no longer standing at the center, trying to control everything around you. You begin to stand beside it, listening, trusting. And in that shift, a very different kind of strength is forming. Not loud, not dramatic, but enduring. You do not need to understand everything yet. Just allow yourself to remain in this stillness a little longer. Let it do its work. Let it remind you that you do not have to hold the whole world on your shoulders anymore. There is another foundation holding you. And from that foundation, you will learn how to walk without trembling as you once did. When you stop trying to hold everything by your own strength, old stories begin to rise within you, not the stories of others, but deep memories rooted in the tradition of faith, where even those who seemed strongest once reached the bottom. You realize you are not alone in this experience. The path you are walking has already been marked by trembling footsteps before you, and heaven has never withdrawn its hand when they were at their weakest. There was someone who lost everything in a very short time: work, family, health, honor. He sat among ashes with nothing left to prove, nothing left to protect, no role to cling to. And it was in that place that seemed empty that truth was finally spoken. Job did not meet heaven when he stood strong, but when he was honest. Not when he understood, but when he admitted that he could not understand at all. And from that forced rest, from that painful stillness, a restoration beyond imagination was opened. Then you think of another man, one who led an entire nation through the desert, someone used to giving commands, used to carrying responsibility, used to standing between the cries and hopes of millions. But one day he told heaven plainly that he could not carry it anymore, not because he was unfaithful, but because he was exhausted. And heaven did not become angry. Heaven did not call him weak. Heaven shared the burden. Heaven placed other shoulders into the story. If someone who once parted the sea still needed support, then your need for rest is nothing to be ashamed of. The story then leads you to a very different kind of warrior, someone hiding in fear, seeing himself as small, not enough, but heaven called him by a name he never dared to use for himself. A mighty warrior. And before victory came, heaven did something very strange. Heaven took away, layer by layer, from 32,000 down to 300, not to make things harder, but to make one thing clear. This victory would not be built on numbers or human strength. It would be built on presence. As these stories weave together, you begin to see a pattern. Every time a human being reaches their true limit, heaven does not turn away. Heaven steps in, not to judge, but to take over. Not to prove power, but to protect a weary soul. And right here, a divine mark is placed very gently, but very clearly. The number 444 appears not as something mystical, but as a reminder. It speaks of foundation, of protection, of the truth that even when everything above is shaking, there is still a solid structure underneath holding it all. 444 does not promise that you will never face storms. It promises that you are not standing on sand. It reminds you that invisible layers of support were set in place long before you realized you needed them. And if you feel a resonance with this number, or with any other number that seems to whisper to you, you may remember it as something personal, a very quiet way of recognizing that heaven is speaking in a language you understand. You may have grown used to thinking that you must be strong in order to be used, but these stories reveal a different truth. Heaven is not looking for those who never get tired. Heaven looks for those willing to set the burden down when they are tired, not to quit, but to change the source of strength. There is a kind of strength that does not come from trying harder, but from standing still long enough to be reached. Here, you begin to clearly see the difference between resting and giving up. Giving up is turning away. Resting is returning. Returning to the foundation that has always been there. Returning to the truth that you are not the only pillar holding everything together. And when you allow yourself to believe this, even a little, some of the tension inside you begins to dissolve, not because the problems disappear, but because you no longer have to strain to maintain the image of being strong. You may have feared that if you admit your exhaustion, you will lose your role, lose your value. But in these stories, you see that true value is not taken away when a person is weak. It is revealed. When all the layers fall away, what remains is not emptiness, but relationship. And that is what heaven has always valued more than achievement. You begin to understand that pauses along the journey are not mistakes. They are transitions, places where the soul is gently set back into its rightful position. not to be left behind, but to be placed on a firmer foundation. And 404 stands there like a marker, reminding you that there are foundations you did not build, yet you stand on them every day. As this truth settles, you no longer see your exhaustion as an enemy. You see it as a guiding signal, a reminder that it is time to change how you walk, not slower out of fear, but slower out of trust. Trust that there is protection at work even when you cannot see it. Trust that layers of support have been prepared for you long ago. You do not need to decide everything right now. Just stay with this truth a little longer. Let it do its work within you. Let it remind you that those who walked before you once stood exactly where you are standing now, and they were not abandoned. They were led through, and so will you. There is a very fragile moment that happens after you realize you no longer have to hold everything. It is the moment when you stand between two habits. One old habit keeps pulling you back into worrying, calculating, controlling, and a new path has just opened, quieter, but also leaving you feeling empty, not because it is wrong, but because you are not used to living without bracing yourself. Letting go, for you, is not a natural act. It is a decision that must be chosen again and again. You may have prayed and said that you handed your burdens to heaven, but only minutes later, worry returns like a reflex. You blame yourself, thinking your faith is not strong enough. But the truth is, letting go is not something that happens in a single moment. It is a discipline, a conscious act, repeated over and over until your soul learns a new rhythm. There is a very direct word spoken in Psalm 55, saying to cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. That word does not promise that the burden will disappear immediately. It promises that you will not be crushed under its weight, and that difference matters deeply. You are not invited to pretend you no longer worry. You are invited to stop carrying that worry alone. You have grown used to letting worry run ahead of everything. It decides how you react, how you speak, how you sleep, how you prepare for the future. You call it responsibility, but in truth, it is fear wearing the clothes of diligence. And every time that fear rises, you have a choice. You can let it lead as before, or you can do something different, even something very small. Stop and redirect your attention. Here, an uncomfortable but freeing truth is spoken clearly. Worry is not an unavoidable reflex. It is a choice that has become a habit. And if worry is a choice, then worship is also a choice. Not worship as a loud ritual, but as a reorientation. Each time you choose worship, you are saying that fear no longer holds the central role. You are moving your gaze away from the problem and placing it on the one who holds the entire picture. This does not make you irresponsible. It makes you more awake. You still do your part. You still walk in what is set before you, but you stop trying to carry the outcome. There is a very clear boundary here, and when you begin to see it, much unnecessary pressure falls away on its own. Your part is obedience. Heaven's part is the outcome. When those two are mixed together, your soul is stretched beyond what it can bear. You may be used to thinking that if you do not worry, no one will. But the truth is, your worry has never been what held this world together. It has only made you more tired. There are things you have done with all your strength, and there are things completely beyond your reach. Wisdom is not found in trying to control the second part, but in knowing where to place it. When you begin to practice this, it will feel very strange at first. A space opens up, where there used to be constant thoughts, scenarios, and endless questions. That space may make you uneasy, but within that space, something else begins to appear. Not answers to every problem, but a peace sufficient for you to keep walking without breaking. You do not need to win this battle in a single day. No one is asking you to become someone who never worries. What you are learning is how to recognize sooner when worry begins to take over, and to choose a different response. Sometimes that response is simply a very honest whisper, "I have carried this too long. Now I set it down." Not because I do not care, but because I trust that there is one who holds it better than I do. Each time you do this, even for a few seconds, a new path is formed within you. At first, it is faint, easily covered by old habits. But over time, that path grows deeper. And one day, you realize you no longer fall into the spiral of worry as quickly as before, not because life has become easier, but because you have learned how not to carry everything alone. You do not lose seriousness when you let go of worry. You only lose the illusion that you must be the one in control of everything. And when that illusion falls away, what remains is not chaos, but order, a deeper order, not built on fear, but on trust. There may still be very hard days, days when worry returns strongly, days when you feel yourself slipping back. But that does not mean you have failed. It simply means you are learning a new language for your soul, a language that does not begin with the question, "What if everything falls apart?" but with a quiet affirmation, "I no longer have to hold this." And as you continue to choose this, little by little, you will discover that peace is not something that comes after everything is resolved. It comes first. It is the ground you stand on while everything else is still moving. You do not wait for life to be stable before having peace. You walk in peace even when life is not yet stable, because you know you are not walking alone. This shift is not loud. People around you may not even notice, but your soul knows. It knows that it has just learned a different way to live. Not a life without burdens, but a life where burdens are placed in the right hands. And that is what begins to return to you a very different kind of strength. Not the strength to endure more, but the strength to breathe. When you begin to set the burden down, something very strange happens. The world does not collapse the way you once feared. Everything keeps moving. The sun still rises, the rhythm of life continues. And within that continuation, you begin to realize that there is another rhythm operating alongside it. A rhythm you did not create, did not control, but that has always been there. You have simply stopped interfering with it. You once thought that if you did not stay awake on watch, everything would fall into chaos. But now, as you allow yourself to rest, you discover that there is one who has never slept. There were nights when you tossed and turned, your mind racing, your heart heavy with unresolved things. But even in those nights, when you were too tired to pray in words, there was still another wakefulness keeping the rhythm of the entire story. Psalm 121 says this very clearly, not as comforting poetry, but as a foundational truth. The one who keeps you does not slumber, does not sleep. That means when you stop, heaven does not stop. When you rest, heaven is still working. When you let go, invisible movements are taking place behind the curtain that you cannot see. You have been used to measuring progress by what you can do. You look at actions, results, speed, but there are works that are not measured by busyness. There are changes that do not come from doing more, but from stopping your interference. And in that still space, you begin to understand something you were never quiet enough to see before. Many things you called delay were actually preparation. You may have once grown impatient with heaven, wondering why your prayers were not answered yet, why the door remained closed, why everything seemed still while you had tried your best. But when you look again from this new perspective, you begin to see that there were doors which, if opened earlier, you would not have had the strength to walk through. There were answers which, if they had come sooner, would have weighed you down instead of setting you free. During that waiting time, a very deep work is taking place. Not outside, but inside. Layers of tension are being loosened. Misplaced expectations are being adjusted. Old beliefs begin to crack to make room for a different way of seeing. You stop trying to force everything to happen on your timeline. You begin to learn how to live within heaven's time, where everything has its own rhythm. This does not make you passive. It makes you more aware. You no longer panic when things do not go according to plan. You no longer see silence as a sign of abandonment. You begin to understand that sometimes silence is heaven's way of protecting you from rushed decisions, from steps taken too early. And that protection, though quiet, is very real. You may have thought that you were forgotten, that your story was left unfinished somewhere in a corner, but the truth is, you have never left heaven's sight. Not one of your prayers was lost. Not one moment of silent struggle went unnoticed. Even when you no longer had the strength to believe, there was still a faithfulness holding you. A very different kind of peace begins to form when you trust this. Not peace because everything is done, but peace because you know you are being led. You no longer need to see the entire road ahead in order to keep walking. You only need to know that your next step is not outside of that care, and that is enough to keep you from panicking when the future becomes unclear. During this time, you may notice yourself speaking less, explaining less, trying to prove less, not because you have given up, but because you no longer need validation the way you once did. You begin to live at a slower rhythm, not because you lack motivation, but because you have changed the source of your motivation. You no longer run out of fear of falling behind. You walk because you know you are being guided. There will still be days when you feel impatient. There will still be moments when you want to return to old habits, to push everything forward on your own, but then you remember what you have learned. If the one who keeps you does not sleep, then you do not need to stay awake all night. You no longer need to live in constant alert. You can rest without guilt. You can wait without fear. And in that waiting, something very important is being built, a trust that does not depend on immediate results. You no longer need to see progress to know that you are on the right path. You begin to trust presence more than signs, relationship more than evidence. This does not make you blind. It makes you steadier in the face of change. You begin to realize that there are battles won not by rushing in, but by standing still. Not standing still in fear, but standing still with the assurance that another power is at work. And when you stand still in that way, you are not left behind. You are placed exactly where you need to be. At this point, your story no longer revolves around the question of when things will change. It begins to revolve around a deeper question. Are you willing to trust that heaven is working even when you cannot see it? And that very question opens a new level of maturity within you, a level not built on effort, but on intentional rest. You do not need to understand everything happening behind the curtain. You only need to know this one thing. You are not forgotten in the waiting. You are not overlooked in the silence. You are being held. And while you rest, gears are turning, arrangements are forming, doors are being prepared to open at the right time. When this truth settles in, you no longer fear slowing down. You begin to see it as grace, a buffer that allows your soul to grow before stepping into what comes next. And that next season, when it arrives, will not crush you the way it once might have, because you will not enter it with an exhausted soul, but with an inner life that has been firmly anchored. When you no longer have to stay awake guarding the whole world, a very quiet space begins to open inside you. Not a frightening emptiness, but a space that never existed before, because it was always filled with worry, responsibility, and endless effort. In that space, something very different is waiting for you. Not a big answer, not a detailed plan, but a closeness you have forgotten for far too long. You begin to realize that what exhausted you was not only the tasks you had to do, but the feeling that you had to carry everything by yourself. had to be strong by yourself, had to be okay by yourself, had to stand firm so no one would be disappointed. But when you stop long enough, you notice a presence that never left. You were simply too busy to feel it. Not the presence of distant power, but of a love that is very near. There is a quiet fear you have carried that you may have never named. The fear that if you are truly weak, if you are truly tired, if you can no longer maintain that image of strength, then you will be left behind, seen as a burden, forgotten. But here your story touches a very different truth. God does not come to you when you perform your best. He comes when you are most real. Psalm 56 says that every tear of yours is counted, gathered, not lost into meaningless space. What does that mean? It means the nights you turned your face into the pillow so no one would hear you sob, the moments you clenched your teeth to keep from crying in front of others, the times you pretended to be okay to keep the peace. None of it disappeared. It was seen, not to reopen the pain, but to affirm that you were never meant to endure alone. Perhaps you are used to the image of a powerful, majestic, almighty God, but here you encounter another side, a gentleness that does not weaken power, but brings it close, a care that is not loud, but enduring, a love that does not require you to do more to be worthy. You do not need to prove you are good enough to be cared for. You are cared for because you are a child. This touches a very deep layer within you, the layer that learned to self-protect, to brace itself, to shut down whenever tired. You learn not to trouble anyone with your pain. You learn to handle everything in silence. But that silence, over time, stopped being strength. It became a wall. And now, in this rest, that wall begins to crack. Not to make you weaker, but to allow you to be reached, to be comforted, to be held. You no longer need to hide the fractured parts of yourself. There is no part of you that makes heaven turn away, no question too difficult, no emotion too heavy. You are not loved because you control well, but because you belong. As you let this sink in, you begin to look at yourself with different eyes, softer, more honest. You no longer rush to judge yourself when you are tired. You no longer see tears as a sign of failure. You begin to understand that sometimes tears are how the soul exhales after being held in for too long. And heaven does not rush to wipe your tears just to make you stand again. Heaven sits long enough for you to finish crying. Perhaps this is the first time you allow yourself to believe that care comes without conditions, that you do not need to finish everything before you are allowed to rest. Do not need to be strong before you are loved. Do not need to pass every trial before you are embraced. This truth goes against much of what you learned, but it begins to heal places that effort never could reach. You realize that what tired you most was not the work, but the pressure to always play a role, the role of the carrier, the role of the stable one, the role of the one who is not allowed to fall. But in this presence, those roles begin to fall away, one by one, not because you are irresponsible, but because you no longer need them to be accepted. This change does not come as a dramatic emotion. It comes quietly, like warmth slowly spreading in your chest, like a sense of safety you cannot remember the last time you felt. You cannot point to the exact moment it happened, but you know something has shifted. You are no longer in constant defense. You are no longer curled inward. And within that safety, you begin to understand that rest is not only stopping work, it is allowing yourself to be loved without bracing, allowing yourself to be who you are with your tiredness, your confusion, your unanswered questions. You do not need to be complete before entering this presence. You enter as you are, and that presence is what renews you. You may still have many things you do not understand, many questions still unanswered, but they no longer panic you the way they once did, because you have found something deeper than answers. You have found a place to rest your heart, a place that does not demand you be strong right away, a place that does not rush you forward, a place wide enough to hold your weariness. Here, your story begins to shift from trying to be held to knowing that you are being held, and that difference is profound. It changes how you walk, how you breathe, how you look ahead. You no longer move forward with the fear of being abandoned. You move with the trust that even when you are weak, you are not alone. You do not need to rush out of this space. Stay a little longer. Let this truth settle. Let it move beyond reason and touch the places you learn to hide. Because from here, you are not only learning how to rest, you are learning how to be loved without needing to prove anything. When you have tasted what it feels like to be held without having to brace yourself, the story begins to touch the ground. It is no longer distant reflection, but real life waiting for you each morning. Trust, if it stays only inside, will soon fade. It needs form. It needs rhythm. It needs to be lived out in small, steady choices. Choices no one applauds, but that have the power to redirect an entire journey. You begin to realize that rest does not happen automatically. It has to be chosen, not once, but many times a day. Choosing not to fill every empty space with noise. Choosing not to react immediately to every pressure. Choosing not to let schedules, expectations, and fear decide the entire rhythm of your life. These choices may sound small, but they begin to reshape how your soul exists in this world. Perhaps your trust begins very simply, 10 quiet minutes before the day carries you away. Not to plan, not to solve problems, but simply to sit and breathe, to remind yourself that you do not step into today alone. Perhaps it is a walk without headphones, without trying to make the time productive, simply letting your thoughts fall before heaven without being judged. You also begin to learn how to say no, not because you do not care, but because you have understood that your limits are not betrayal. Saying no to things that once made you feel valuable, but now only leave you empty. Saying no to a pace of life that always demands running faster than others. Saying no to having to be everywhere to prove you are needed. Each time you say no in this way, you are saying yes to your soul. There are things you once avoided that you now begin to face, not by your own strength, but in trust. Perhaps it is writing down prayers instead of keeping them in your head. Perhaps it is letting worship music play during very ordinary tasks, allowing moments that seem mundane to become places where the soul is reminded. Perhaps it is daring to seek help, daring to say you are not okay, daring to step into healing processes you once delayed because you thought you had to get through on your own. In these choices, an ancient word sounds very gently, more like direction than promise. Psalm 37 says that when the heart finds its delight in the Lord, other things will gradually be put in their right place, not as a transaction, but as an order. When your center shifts, everything around it shifts as well. You no longer live to chase outcomes. You live from a relationship. You also begin to realize that trust does not mean always feeling good. There are days when you are still tired, still confused, still unsure whether you are on the right path. But the difference is, you no longer panic because of it. You no longer see hard days as proof that you are failing. You begin to see them as part of the journey, not the end of it. Perhaps before you only allowed yourself joy when everything was settled. Now you learn to return to joy intentionally, not waiting for it to come on its own, not waiting for circumstances to allow it. You rediscover the things that make you feel alive, not to escape reality, but to remind yourself that your life is not defined only by pressure. Joy is no longer a reward after endurance, but a resource to keep walking. Another very important change begins to take place. You no longer try to control every outcome. You do your part, and then you stop. You do not pull tomorrow's concerns into today. You do not place on your shoulders what is beyond your reach. This does not make you less responsible. It makes you clearer. You know what belongs to you and what you need to set down. In daily life, this trust may not always be understood by others. Some may think you have slowed down. Some may think you have lost passion, but you know exactly what is happening inside you. You have not lost fire. You have changed fuel. You have not abandoned the journey. You have changed how you walk. And this new way of walking does not burn you from the inside. You also learned something very important. You were not created to walk alone. There are seasons when being strong alone is necessary, but there are seasons when the strongest thing is to allow others to step in. Not everyone needs to know everything, but at least one person can see you as you are, without armor. When isolation falls away, many burdens fall with it. Gradually, you realize that peace is no longer an emotion that comes and goes. It becomes a foundation, not because life is less unpredictable, but because you have been anchored somewhere deeper. You are no longer pulled by every small change. You no longer panic when plans are disrupted. You no longer think every loss of rhythm is a disaster. Here, your journey begins to take on a new shape, not loud, not dramatic, but steady. You no longer need to run to prove anything. You walk with a very different steadiness. And in this new rhythm of life, you begin to see clearly. Trust does not take away your agency. It gives you a deeper one, the ability to choose how you show up in this life. You have not reached the destination, but you are no longer as exhausted as before. You no longer walk in fear of being left behind. You are walking from a place that has been held, has been set down in the right place. And that changes everything, even though many things on the outside continue as they always have. A very different kind of quiet settles in when you reach this point of the journey. Not the emptiness that comes after everything ends, but the calm that arrives after a long-held tension is finally released. You are no longer standing in a defensive posture, no longer bracing yourself to catch things that have not yet happened. You still have questions. You still have things that are unclear, but they no longer take up all the space inside you. You begin to realize that you have crossed a very important threshold, not a threshold of success or failure, but a threshold of transition. Before, you lived as if everything depended on whether you were strong enough. Now you live with a different truth. There are things that never depended on your strength, and that is the good news. You were not abandoned. You were released from a role that was never yours. You look back on the road you have traveled and see one thing clearly. You did not collapse because you lacked faith. You grew tired because you tried to live as if everything depended on you. You carried burdens no one asked you to carry. You turned yourself into the pillar for everything around you, then blamed yourself when you could no longer stand. But now you see it plainly. You were not created to be the pillar. You were created to stand on the foundation. That foundation does not shake with your emotions. It does not change with circumstances. It does not demand that you prove your worth every day. It was there before you were exhausted, and it is still there now that you have finally stopped. When you place the weight of your life onto that foundation, you do not disappear. You do not become weaker. You stand taller because for the first time, you are no longer standing on your toes. You may still have very hard days, days when you wake up and old feelings return, days when worry knocks before peace does. But the difference now is that you are not afraid of this. You know you can return to your breath, return to the quiet, return to the truth that you do not have to brace yourself to be held. You are already held. You also begin to see something else, very deep. This journey is not only for you. When you learn to set the burden down, You break a pattern that has been passed on for too long. The pattern of enduring in silence. The pattern of treating exhaustion as something noble. When you choose rest in trust, you open another way, not only for yourself, but for those who are watching you quietly. You do not need to teach anyone. You do not need to explain much. The way you live more slowly, breathe more deeply, react less, already speaks. It says there is another way to live, a way that does not burn the soul to preserve an image, a way that does not turn life into a constant battle. You do not preach with words. You preach with the peace that has become visible in you. You also realize that true victory is not when all problems disappear. Victory is when problems no longer control your inner world, when you can face what is unfinished without falling apart, when you can step into the future without needing to see the entire path, when you can live in the present without being stretched thin by the past or the future. That is a very deep kind of freedom. Perhaps before, you thought that when heaven took over, everything would change immediately in visible ways. But what is happening is far more subtle. Heaven is not only adjusting circumstances. Heaven is reshaping the person standing inside those circumstances. And when a person changes their inner position, many things around them begin to shift as well, slowly, quietly, but steadily. You begin to walk as someone who no longer needs to prove anything. You no longer have to win every argument, no longer have to please everyone, no longer have to keep everything under control. You choose faithfulness instead of perfection. You choose presence instead of performance. And in those choices, you find yourself lighter, clearer, steadier. There is one very important truth you carry from here. When heaven takes over, it does not mean you sit still waiting for a miracle. It means you walk without carrying what is not yours. You do what needs to be done with a heart that is not suffocated by outcomes. You plant seeds, but you do not dig up the soil every day to check. You trust that a process is unfolding even when you cannot see it. And in that trust, you are safe. Not safe because there are no storms, but safe because you no longer face them alone. Not safe because everything goes your way, but safe because there is a guidance that does not leave you for a single step. You no longer live in constant alert. You live in a different readiness, a readiness to be led in ways you have never tried before. Your story does not end here, but a very important chapter has closed. The chapter of bracing yourself to be worthy. The chapter of carrying burdens that were never assigned to you. The chapter of believing that rest is a luxury. From here, you step into a different rhythm. Not the rhythm of hurry, but of trust. Not the rhythm of fear, but of dwelling. You do not need to return to who you were to continue. You carry what you have learned, that you are allowed to stop, that you are allowed to be weak, that you are allowed to set things down, and that when you do, you lose nothing. You find yourself again. Now, as you rise to keep walking, you do not rise alone. You rise from a place that has supported you. You walk with a quiet certainty that is very real, not because you know how everything will turn out, but because you know you no longer have to carry this story by yourself. This journey has brought you to a simple truth, but one strong enough to change everything. You are not forgotten, not delayed, not excluded. You are being led. And when heaven has taken over, your work is no longer to brace yourself, but to walk in that trust, day by day, step by step, with a soul that has finally been set in the right place.
Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.